Okay, and we are recording this session. We are live. I'd like to welcome today's attendees to our online session, Taking Your Mobile Apps Global, Games and Mobile Internationalization and Localization. I'm super excited to have our special guest, Danita Brinton, with us today. She's the principal of Localization. And Denise, I'll let yourself introduce a little bit. We also have Adam Asnett with us. He's president and CEO at Lingoport. My name is Chris Ralph. I'm the marketing director here at Lingoport. And as I said before, please do submit your questions using the GoToWebinar Q&A or chat interface. And you can also tweet them using the hashtag #MobileG11N. And Adam, Danita, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourself?
Gladly. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for organizing this. Thank you to Lingoport and Adam for giving me a chance to speak. My name is Danita Brinton. I am a founder and principal of Localizing Limited. It's a rather geographically distributed company that focuses on international product management, international strategy, localization QA, content management, international feature development. We've been around for about 6 years, and we're an enthusiastic network of really localization enthusiasts and specialists and experts in the field. We have a rather a large user base, and you can read all about it on our Facebook page. In the last couple of years, we have been working with a number of apps developers, and have been quite enjoying that, which I think was the reason Adam and I decided maybe this would be a good session to have together. As I really enjoy working with Lingoport and their tools.
Great. Actually, Adam, do you want to show Danita's Facebook page real quick?
Yeah, I would love to. I was actually planning on doing that in just a bit here, but here's Local Labs, and this is the main way that Local Labs presents themselves, by the way. But go ahead, Danita. Do you want to say anything about it?
Yeah. So lucky for us, for the 6 years that we've been growing our business, really steadily and successfully, we were lucky to always have word of mouth referrals. So obviously we have our website and we have our Facebook page. I was just chatting with Chris and Adam that maybe it is time to perhaps put together some marketing material finally. Our clients never seem to mind that we didn't bother. That we focused on technology and localization and our localization expertise, honing more than marketing. But if you'd like to follow us, we do have a Facebook page, and we try to keep people updated in what we're doing.
Cool. Thanks. Adam, do you want to say a quick word about Lingoport before we get this started?
Yeah, sure. We have, first of all, I want to say hello to a lot of new people. We give these webinars almost every month, and we have a pretty strong following, but this session in particular brought in a lot of new interests, and so welcome to those who are kind of new to finding out about us or joining these webinars, which is really great. We appreciate having you here. We got some great new questions, too. Just a little bit about me. I started the company it's definitely the sort of thing where I started on my kitchen table, quite literally in 2001. But Lingoport has built up to be kind of I identified that internationalization was not really well represented in the current localization provider network, and so really focused on software internationalization, just having software development as kind of innate to our nature, really focused in that perspective.
So we built LingoPort, and you can see that we have a great deal of focus on services, but also a product, Globalizer, which first started out as a tool to help us deliver our services, and then we always intended it to be a product that stands on its own, and it has done so quite nicely, helping teams to manage quite a bit of their own internationalization efforts, either initially or over time, with legacy code as well as brand new development. So you can see a little bit about that at lingoport.com. I should mention a few things also, in that we have this great blog put together that regularly has new content. I would urge you to go see it. It's just i18nblog.com, and I should have had that up and ready, but you get the idea. You can also, we do plenty of more informal kinds of messages on Facebook, and you're very welcome to friend us if you like. We also tend to, kind of feature various different events, our own little picnics. That's Spencer. He maintains the blog, by the way. It's a good place to be connected to see what's kind of the latest in the industry. And we really keep our information not to be necessarily LingoPort-centric, but something where every time you go to that blog, you have something that sort of helps your own professional knowledge. And that's kind of a philosophy for all our marketing materials at LingoPort, that it's not just about us, it's really about you and bringing you forward. So that's me and us in a nutshell. And I think Chris has a few poll questions, so we gather a little information about our audience. Chris?
Yeah. Actually, if you want to go back to the maybe the slide while I start the first poll here, if you wouldn't mind answering real quick. Sorry. Are you directly involved in developing mobile applications or games? We just want to get a feel for the audience, get to know you real quick, a little bit better. And
okay, so
why don't we do maybe a few more seconds here, and then I'll show the results. So far, we have about 50% yes, 25 no, 25 planning in the future. And let's do 5 more seconds here, and then I will show the results. And let's quickly share that. 47 yes, 35 no, planning in the future 19. All right. Then why don't we do a second poll as well, which would be, are you globalizing your applications now? So if you don't mind answering that question as well, we'll do probably another 15 seconds. So far, wow, but 75% yes, 8% no, 18 planning in the future. I'll give it 5 more seconds, then I'll show the results. And then Adam, let me do 2 more seconds, and I'm going to close the poll now, and I will share the results. So a lot of you are actually already globalizing your applications now. Adam, why don't we go ahead, if you want to take on the rein here and maybe start with a few questions for Danitza, and I'll be fielding questions from the audience, okay?
You bet. I'm happy to do that. I do want to set the stage a little bit. This is, most of you are very aware of the growth of the mobile market, but really the distinction between mobile and PC, or for that matter, PC being personal computer, I don't really care which type, but the market really is growing dramatically. That is really where the action is. You may have seen news reports that Apple is poised to become the leading manufacturer of personal computers, if you consider, in their case, the iPad a personal computer. Personally, I don't see why you would not consider a tablet as a personal computer, given how high-powered the processors are these days. Our smartphones, even themselves, although it's a form factor change, they're dual-core processors now. These are really and true mobile platforms, and in any case, I'm looking at the time period to where we ditch our laptops is not really very far away. Indeed, many people may have already been able to do that, depending upon how aggressively they've embraced the cloud. So if you don't have a mobile strategy, and this is a very distinct audience, I think you're kind of maybe even a little late and missing some very important areas, unless, of course, you are a device manufacturer like a mobile, like a medical products manufacturer or something like that. You simply have to, and even in that case, the tablet form factor is really here to stay, and if anything, it's just the very beginning, very exciting. Numbers here, just to put in perspective, this, I think, is what you see on my screen is a pretty conservative number when you're talking about the explosion of usage. So 119 billion in mobile commerce by 2015. I think that's really conservative. And I'm going to add one more screen, and this screen I like because it doesn't just talk about the importance of the growing mobile market. It speaks specifically to globalization. If we were interactive, I'd ask if people can know what they're looking at. It's kind of dim, and I'm hoping it shows up through this interface. It's really rather a pretty slide. It's on Flickr, and what it is somebody, a graduate research student, did a study of what languages are people using Twitter in around the world. I'm picking Twitter because it is by its nature very much a mobile-oriented platform. Of course, you can use it on a PC and all that, but as I say, you really it's in the palm of people's hands. It's people's day-to-day observations, and it looks a lot like a light pollution map of the world. If you've ever seen one of those, but in this case, the colors aren't really the country. The colors are the languages that are being spoken. And so what you see is that mobile, or Twitter in particular, it's a very localization-oriented platform. And I think that when you find mobile platforms, you see more localization orientation than ever before. It's always been important to localize your apps, but I think mobile puts a very special emphasis on it because by its nature, you're going into a consumer product area. People use it in their hand. It's very informal, and they're going to prefer whatever language is their first language rather than English as their modus operandi. And in fact, you may be installed on a system that is by default having the locale being set up for their native country rather than U.S. English. So you really have to have your stuff together. Here, I think it's more important than any other platform ever before in its inception. So with that, we're going to go to some questions. By the way, as we're giving these questions, just a quick reminder, we've got a pretty good list, but we do have time for more questions as we go. Use the question interface in your in the GoToMeeting, or if you like, you can use the hashtag for the event, #mobile G11N. All right, so first question that we got, market overview. What's going on in the gaming industry today? Boy, that's a broad question. I'm going to let Denise start that one.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a broad question. Well, let me use it to segue to our topic. So, yeah, really quickly, I'm sure there's a lot of gamers out there on our call today. Who isn't a gamer these days? Well, as we all know, used to be, and this is a gross oversimplification, you're a little game studio, you develop a game, a concept, and you get to a playable demo, you shop around publishers, get your publisher, you decide on a distribution strategy, build versions for various channels, you market those channels, you build a game, you shrink wrap it, and look at your sales. Until the sequel, you're pretty much done. for better or worse. You had to determine your features of your game through user experience testing, and then you watched sales. If sales are slacking, your one lever to increase them is advertising, or more generally more channels. Building of games traditionally has been an expensive business, and this just described, is fairly expensive business reserved to a handful of studios and even smaller handful of publishers. Successful sales are in hundreds of thousands, right? And then, obviously, MMOs, online games, virtual worlds that came around in the last 10 years. A business model, again, grows on oversimplification. Your user may pay for the download or not. They may pay for the subscription, or you may just have a freemium model there where they're just spending money on virtual goods, or have you have premium subscriptions. You build a game and you can update it periodically. Larger user numbers, obviously, than what you can get through shrink wrap, game sales. You can observe the patterns that users have directly, and you can adjust the game to increase usage and monetization. Obviously, you want, in this case, concurrence is the lifeblood of the success. Still fairly expensive to build, takes large teams, just like the most traditional versions. But then, in the last couple of years, we've been seeing an explosion in social and mobile games, where the proverbial two guys in a garage can build a super successful mobile social games. I'm sure all of you know a few of those and play them. These two guys in a garage. The quality does not have to be the best when you first go out. You can improve as you go. I mean, look at some of the most successful mobile games on iTunes. They're super simplistic. I mean, so simplistic. It's funny. But you do have this amazing ability of real-time tracking. And you can tweak your game every single day. You can release every day your social game, even your mobile game, if you're releasing on server side. You can start small, and then you can expand. You can only release a few levels, and then you build as you go, as you see how your users use it. Same with features, your storyline. I mean, look at every game out there, just how they're evolving. It's really interesting. There's new characters that then appear, their monetization strategy gets a little tweaked, distribution channels, user communications, you can get, if you're successful, obviously you'll have more promotional strategies to play with later, but all that is very fluid. You can, again, it's constantly iterative. And then you have, on your side, you have virality, especially in social games, less so on mobile, although we're starting to see some really promising virality features now in mobile games as well. And then, you look at it, if you are, most of these are freemium models. They're obviously free to play, and then there's a handful of games that you still have to play to download from your app store, but most are free, and then you pay obviously for your virtual goods. You pay for to go through levels faster, and even if 1% are payers, you can potentially be very profitable. And obviously much larger audiences than MMOs or virtual worlds or online games, and that's because you're really getting a very different demographics here. It's very democratic, extremely available, and it's right there in front of people, and through virality even more so, and it is super global. Super global. I didn't talk much about localization. Those traditional games, a AAA title. It's a very expensive to produce them, and even more, and then their localization usually had a very different way of being done. Same with MMOs, virtual worlds, maybe a little less so, but social mobile games really have come global to you, even if you just have your game in English. And this is the area where your localization just achieves amazing results. Anyway, even the social mobile gaming space is becoming super crowded, super competitive. You look at Facebook, there's 200 games releasing every week. Most of them are mediocre or substandard, but there are numbers out there. So you have to be more competitive. It's becoming it's actually, well, it is, we are, I was talking about two guys in a garage. I mean, it is becoming much more competitive space now. You have to release it a little richer, and it's best if you go with a deeper game, and if you can market it more, you may have to start worrying about keeping your players' attention, because obviously there's a lot of detractors and a lot of other games that will take their attention if you're not careful. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think it gives you a gives you a good perspective on where the gaming space seems to be heading these days.
Great. Guys, we have a ton of questions pouring in. Anita, maybe if you just briefly want to address the following question. You mentioned the freemium model. Do all games end up going the way of freemium in the long run? Maybe just a quick, as quick as you can.
Yeah, they do freemium, so it's free to download, free to play, and you pay for virtual goods or for or a premium subscription, right? So mainly virtual goods in energy. So that's, I think I mentioned the definition of it previously.
Yeah, but do you think, do all games, is that the trend that they're going freemium in the long run? Is that the model we're going to see here?
Yeah, I mean that's what you're seeing right now, right?
Yeah.
Look on App Store, look on all the various games and apps on Facebook, right? Brother, that's
okay.
Right, and the interesting thing is, even if it's not free, it's really close to free when you pay for it. The paid version isn't very expensive either. But yeah.
Great. Adam, do you want to pick another question, a pre-submitted
question?
Yeah,
I actually really like this question because it deals with a lot of nuts and bolts of operations. What kind of people do you need? And I'm going to say, bend that as, what kind of people do you need to write globalized mobile apps, not just games, but mobile apps? And I know I have my answer on that, is that when you're adapting software for internationalization, one of the mistakes that I see a lot of companies do is they put somebody junior on it first. And internationalization is actually a pretty senior problem. You have to be familiar with the entire application. You have to be familiar with principles, not just string externalization, but actually how variables get passed throughout the entire app, which may have a database backend or not. I mean, depends upon how complex the app is. But we see some really complex apps that just happen to have a mobile interface. But there's a ton going on in the back end. I mean, think of like an example as being a travel website with a widget that runs on an Android handset or on an iPhone. So in that case, there's all kinds of data being passed throughout the application. I might add, GoToMeeting has a mobile app. If there's anybody from Citrix on the line, I'm going to call you out. GoToMeeting is not well internationalized. Everybody who registered for this webinar with an accent mark on their name, that got kind of a little destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the type of people you need tend to be actually more senior engineers to lead the effort. It's not just a string externalization process that you can just hand everyone, and even string identification can have a lot to do with understanding what is actually going on in the code. So I also am going to say something else that maybe gets me in hot water. Typically, your internationalization expert doesn't come from the localization engineering side, at least at first. This is often like a senior architect level person, a very senior engineer that leads the effort, and then you can kind of bring the effort down to implementation stages with engineers who are more used to dealing with one area of the code. Anything to add, Danica?
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Adam. My personal experience is a good developer, a really good developer is definitely needed at these earlier stages, and localization engineers definitely get overwhelmed when faced with these initial stages of framework setup, internationalization. There was, I think, a couple of questions that I think came from Common Sense Advisor that I really liked, and I think you're picking from those. It was what kind of mistakes that newbies make in taking mobile apps and case global. And to Adam's point, this disregard for internationalization framework, integration and release system, automation. You see, we'll get Java files often, question, can you just do this for us? There's definitely, you definitely need more senior web developers or, real engineers, what I'm going to say. But I have to say, I've been extremely lucky with good new grads from from more prestigious tech schools coming out with a lot of enthusiasm for the field and really eager to jump in with good coding with good development skills. But back to what newbies make, mistakes that you can find newbies make in taking mobile apps and games global. You always see this pushback on SimShip. Let's ship English and then worry about languages later. That's usually a recipe for disaster. It looks like a number of our attendees today come from the localization or internationalization world and are probably well aware that that's a proven fact. Another thing that I noticed with people just starting in app localization, they'll they'll do some searches on Google and then outsource translation to a cheapest vendor. There's nothing worse. It's sometimes better to just leave your app alone in English than to badly translate it. You can do a ton of damage by deciding, hey, these people are giving you these insanely cheap rates, and this is who I'm going to go with. Oftentimes, you'll get students of the target language in some in some third country that may not that will probably provide that necessary margin to your provider, but definitely will not do you a favor. And then, just the run-of-the-mill other things that newbies can, that you see, vendors don't get enough context or don't get access to English builds. There's, I've heard, even QA managers say something like, if it works in English, you don't have to test it in other languages. So yeah, you definitely need localization QA. But I have to say that, I was a minute ago saying that I really like working, that, I've had a lot of really great experience just, hiring new grads. And then I think it's in comparison to about, 10 years ago, I've obviously been around for quite a few years in this industry. And it's actually, I think there's more awareness of some basic things around internationalization and localization than we used to see in the marketplace.
Cool.
Adam? I'm just gonna mention there are a number of questions coming in that have a lot of detail on sort of the nuts and bolts of how you would handle multiple mobile apps in terms of what types of resource files and the like. I'll probably answer those via email afterwards. We're not going to get to every question, but what we will do is send out an email responding to all of these questions that are unique. I mean, if your question is sort of similar to somebody else's, it might take us a day or two, but we'll get it out. So keep your questions coming, even if we can't get to them. I'm going to actually switch to a question that is asked that I think is generally very interesting that Leandro just asked, which is, in addition to localizing it, how critical is it to culturalize a game? Is it worth the extra time and money? I'm just going to mention a word game that was sent to us to work on that it wouldn't, I mean, just localizing it honestly would have made it not really applicable. I mean, it really needed to be culturalized. That's one example, but maybe I think that's the answer is really an it depends question. But then it's you've seen more than I in that area. Maybe you can.
Well, it really depends on the game, right? So some games will do really, some American-built games will do really well in Europe. And poorly in Asia or vice versa. And you do really see preference for certain game type in various markets. Another thing is, so, for example, Japan, Korea, your inventory, your mechanics will definitely need a lot of cultural scrutiny. You will monetize more if you do, in these markets. So it is, you will have the ROI to invest in some of that culturalization. Combat games, competitive games are obviously more popular there, just as an example. But yeah, it really depends on your game, and it is really worthwhile doing a cultural review. Another thing is that a lot of what I've seen, a lot of mobile social games out there built in the States would tend to be rather U.S.-centric. Their content may be written really fast. As I was saying earlier, in my long-winded answer to that gaming question, was that these things can release every single day. So you can localize every single day. You can release and sync all of these daily, and we do that with our clients. In that fast-paced development, sometimes some of these U.S. centricities may creep in. So do open your ears to cultural reviews. Locals, for example, we do this religiously. We look through your content to make sure there's nothing primarily offensive or illegal for the target markets, and we'll definitely culturalize the content and even build specific content for specific countries. We've been pretty successful, for example, doing some holiday promos, not as much individual collectibles or whatever, but it's really it's a worthwhile thing to think about, and I think again probably even more so for the Asian market than the European one or the South American.
Okay, good. Next question here. This was asked before the webinar. I want to make sure we get to the people that wrote to us ahead of time. How do you bake in I-18N or L10N accessibility, mobility, and usability into interactive product releases without overloading dev and QA? Boy, that's that question really applies to a lot more than mobile, for sure. I have my own solution, obviously, that our company promotes, which is our Globalizer software, which is used to analyze code. It can be, checked as you write it and the like. But really, what a tool is it assists in enabling a culture, and that culture has to say, hey, global is important, and we're going to make measurement of that and support of that important to our organization. And really, tools on its own, any tool on its own without that sort of mindset will tend to sit on a shelf or be underutilized. So it's really important that if you're baking things in, that you spend a lot of time on the international culture of the company within its development teams, and you know, that's kind of an ongoing effort, and it involves, you know, education and tools, of course, but it just sort of almost involves, you know, kind of some of the fun and some of the interaction that you have as a company that takes precedence, as I see it. Danica, you have anything to add?
Well, you nailed it. I think in the blog on the Lingoport site I wrote a couple of weeks ago, I addressed a lot of really prerequisites to you know, integrating international development fully into your into your organization, product development, and you know, and strategies, general, you know, company strategies. But as far as, you know, more narrowly speaking, you know, integrating internationalization, localization into iterative product releases without overloading dev and QA. Well, so much like Adam said, your solid having a solid internationalization framework is paramount. One that's flexible for to address your target markets. Automating your release system with your localization processes. So your localization basically ties into your release system and into your localization tools, so that you have full cycle localization with ease and have that readiness of rapid release and rapid SIMship release. Pick a localization agency that is flexible enough to tackle rapid development, obviously. You have to bring localization into your development product management processes. So, you know, into how you know, your PRDs are written, if you have PRDs, or how your, you know, app concepts are being written. Just, you know, do a quick cultural localizability review, and you know, include whatever, you know, however small or large you are, include your localization DRIs into the process. You know, you can actually integrate internationalization, localization QA into your agile processes. If you're an agile store, agile can work wonders for the rapid development with localization and internationalization without really obstructing your developers or your QA. And you know, having a strong outsourced localization QA provider always helps. And then something that we were talking about earlier, you know, who you hire. Even if you can't hire, you know, if all you can do is hire a project manager for your for international into your team, make sure that it's somebody who's super technically strong and not afraid to get their hands dirty with bug triage, with content reviews, has, you know, good communication skills, and can drive this rapid development with competence and enthusiasm.
Cool. Actually, hey Adam, sorry if I interrupt real quick. I'd like to thank Laura for submitting an idea for an upcoming webinar. Actually, I'd like to mention, I think tentatively we planned for January 19th to do another sort of like online roundtable on the topic that we're discussing today. And I'm in the process of putting together like an expert panel now. If you'd like to be involved, just shoot me a quick email. I think I sent you all an email. Let me know if you're interested. And then I think also in March, beginning or mid-March, we'll be doing an event in the Silicon Valley on localization, internationalization, globalization. So I'll probably send you guys an email with a little bit more information. Adam, Danica, back to you guys.
Yeah, I'll add. Laura was asking for that to be more technically oriented, you know, really nuts and bolts, and we can definitely put something like that together, and make it into sort of like a quick distinction event, training type event. But All right, so here's another question here near and dear to my heart. What kinds of tools have you used in the globalization process of mobile apps and games? Dennis, I'll let you go first.
Well, we, as I mentioned before, Local Labs, we're big fans of Localizer, a really good tool to diagnose your internationalization. And then it's not, I know we've been sounding a little bit like a marketing campaign here, plugging ourselves and our tools. I do really believe in towards Globalizer though. And then for localization, we'll use, I like using online real-time localization tools. There's not a great selection out there yet, but we've used some commercial tools and implemented it into successfully into release processes and full cycle releases in localization pretty well. These online tools such as XTM, Ontram, Travis's online version, MemoQ, and others. They're starting to really shape up in a way that are becoming interesting to more hardcore localization.
I'm going to also mention, just to add to that some of the traditional tools of the past for localization management, and I won't name them to be polite, but they really are oriented towards a Windows device type of implementation, and some of them have certainly gone beyond that a little bit, but they tend to treat everything like in terms of HTML, and their answer is rather than dealing with dynamic content, to deal with content in a static manner. So you have a separate page for every locale. And to me, that is very much a 1990s type of architecture they're still supporting. And we see that with localization-oriented products that really focus on managing the resources or replicating the interface, and sort of like running interference between Windows OS and the actual display screen, rather than truly working on an internationalization basis with a truly internationalized product. That's a distinction I could talk about a lot, but there isn't much out there right now that actually reaches into a database and lets you see a locale-centric view. I've seen some prototype work in that area, but that's a hole that I see in the industry right now.
Are you talking about in-context tools?
Yeah.
Especially for Flash games or even mobile games, it's still
right.
There's really nothing out there, and I think there's a if anyone is thinking of starting a business, a lot of companies would love that. That would be a very successful product.
Yeah, I actually have seen some pretty cool prototype stuff, but it wasn't quite ready for prime time by any means. All right, next is let's see. What are two most common mistakes that newbies make in taking mobile apps and games global? We talked a little bit about that, but maybe we can, a short, quick answer on two common mistakes.
I just addressed that question, so I'll let you talk.
Okay. Just really is like, here's my code, make it Spanish. I would say that would be a bad mistake. Often there are a lot of mobile providers that are very underfunded. I'll also say we see a lot less of this now, but I remember a game that we worked on a few years ago, quite a few years ago. I'm going to really date myself, but this game was really, really popular. It's called Kid Pix, and we unfortunately had to also support a lot of older OSs because this was a game that was probably going, in many cases, to run on grandma's computer. And so, unfortunately, when you have to support older technology, some of those don't support Unicode very well, and then you have to get into some very creative workarounds. So I would say third-party tools is a really common mistake, or third-party platforms that might just not be in their haste to be released, not be particularly Unicode friendly. So those are worth investigation as you go. So don't just throw it out there and say make it Spanish. I mean, think it through. How are people going to be using this? What's going to make sense? And make sure that your technical platforms actually will meet that objective, and be brave enough to say, hey, if some of them don't, you need to only go forward with this version of technology, or even switch what that third-party product is. You see less and less of that now, thank God, but we used to have to do some really creative work around it. All right, Dana, do you want to answer that further, or should I just move on?
I actually answered it in quite a bit of detail,
yeah,
so
you did.
I'll leave it at that. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, thanks.
Let's talk about mistakes that veterans make, not newbies. I could talk about a lot about that, in that veterans will still sort of, first of all, it's rare, although you have that more in the mobile game space, but it's rare that one or two people actually develop software. Even you know, the more established game companies will have several developers on a team. You just never have one person that's internationalizing a product or developing global software. So I think there has to be an emphasis on entire teams. And so you can't just depend upon your veterans. And those veterans have to get their message across, spread their message really well. And the other thing is that veterans tend to be very senior people in the organization, so very overtasked. So it's important to have some organizational and tool mechanisms that help spread the word. But the other mistake that I see is people say, oh yeah, we're internationalized, when they don't really and truly know. I can't tell you how many times people say, yeah, our database is UTF-8 ready, and then as soon as we actually check, well, maybe some of it is, but it's really not, and it hasn't been. Maybe it's UTF-8 ready, but there's no concept of locale within the application. And it's just not enough to support Unicode. There's more to it. You can't just say, hey, we run in Java, so we're Unicode compliant. Yeah, Java passes strings in Unicode very natively, but it's just not enough. So nothing, we're still doing this. I remember 10 years ago, people were like, oh, internationalization will just be baked into all software development, but it's never automatic. So the mistake that people think is it's handled. They haven't really tested it, and it's handled, or they haven't even analyzed their code. But you know, there's the assumption that there aren't bottlenecks, and that can really, really cause months, if not even years, in delays. Anything to add?
So what are the two most common mistakes that veterans make in taking mobile apps and games global? Actually, you know, it's just, you know, for the last couple of years, you know, working, living and breathing this mobile apps and development. I gotta say, I think it is a different beast. You know, it is a different animal. It's you know, usually folks who come from, you know, more established localization processes, you know, larger companies out there, technology companies, are more used to, you know, if they're coming from a, you know, web side of things, they're used to, you know, releases every 2 weeks. First week you develop and then localize, second week you test, and it's a much slower pace. You may actually have separated your international versions from your English, and with you know, mobile apps, mobile games, social apps and games. It's, you know, you have to be competitive. You have to constantly be responding to your user metrics, and you have to operate much faster. You have to be ready to SimShip release daily. I know I keep saying this, but it's absolutely true. In order to be, you know, globally competitive. you have to go into a larger number of languages. We haven't touched on the fact that there's just with these in this new space, the marketeer strategy is very different than it used to be. You used to always care about French, German, Japanese. Now you have to actually think about Thailand and Arab and other more challenging localization targets. But yeah, it's just that you really have to be. What I see, veterans usually get stunned at first with the speed of development and speed of operation, and just how much outside of the box you really have to think, how much innovation it involves, and then also how hands-on it has to be until you get it to a more automated and more enterprise level stage.
All right. Here's a question from today. What is a common release timeline for mobile games, and well, I'll just correct the English here, and does localization usually happen post-release? I see a lot of post-release stuff, but that's the nature of my business. What about you, Denitsa?
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm usually encouraging my clients to do things on SBML system. It's actually, even though SimShip sounds scary, shipping at the same time for all your locales, it's actually more effective and economical in the long run. If you set up your internationalization properly, you can really, and you set up your localization processes with a lot of automation and good milestone tracking and a well-driven process. You can release daily, and what that enables is you don't have to be having multiple releases. You don't have to be constantly dealing with uninternationalized code. You don't have to. You can be more successful in the market. It definitely gives you an edge. It gives you a competitive edge to your competition if you can have your if you can have all the languages there at the same time. So yeah, I'm a large proponent of not ever shipping international versions later. It's just it just invites trouble.
I'm going to give you a plug here, Denitsa, in that when she goes in, she often really works to change the organization's mindset in this area, and this is sort of an invitation for everybody on the line. I mean, probably most everybody on this call is really involved day to day in the actual execution of globalization, and particularly with the numbers on the polls that we saw. And the big deal here, and this is one of the things I absolutely love about our industry, in some jobs, what you're trying to do is only related to what I'll call the bottom line. So how much money can you save the company? And in fact, that tends to be where we are measured. So we're often measured on, well, I improved this process this much, and then we saved this much money. But there's always another side to what we do, and that's we're a top-line business. So the faster you can get to market in 32 countries, or whatever it may be, that's the faster you recognize revenue. Now, remember that Twitter screen we showed. If the preference is so strong for a mobile platform, which is really an informal platform in and of itself, or a social platform is an informal platform, if you're going to be going to those languages faster, more efficiently, that has a tremendous top-line impact, because when you're in a competitive world, if some other app is more adapted to that market, customers are going to go to that app, not to your own. So the top-line reasons have never been stronger. So it really is a mission of everybody in their business, not just Lingoport as a company or Localabs as a company, to really affect that vision first, and all the nuts and bolts follow that. And I know we deal with the nuts and bolts. 99% of our work is with the nuts and bolts. But the reality is that's a very effective 1%. Maybe I should call it the 80-20 rule. Our company's phone number is literally 444-8020. 80-20 because it's such an important principle. That is that 20% of your work is going to impact 80% of your results. I mean, it's just a very true. It's a truism, and you could say even that maybe that's more like 3% of your work is going to impact 97% of your work, your results. But we in this position, take that as a forward charge. We really affect a company's global position. You change your company's encoding. You change your company's worldview. You've really changed your company in a profound way. So it's a very exciting space.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah.
So
we're probably wrapping up. Yeah.
About 4 or 5 minutes. If you guys maybe want to answer a couple more questions.
Why don't you read them off, Chris?
Gosh, let me see. Do you want one from the live audience or a pre-submitted question?
Let's go from the live audience, because
Okay.
we mostly answered the pre-submitted questions, although we've kind of. Oh, yeah, here's one with a quick answer. Is there a localization style guide for apps? Not that I've seen. Anything from you? Anything?
Well, I mean, there's standard things in which how do you write for it's a really basic style guide for your iPhone, which is Android, but how do you write your descriptions for the store, and how you structure your marketing text, how you structure your messaging. But it really, I mean, you have to have a style guide for your own app, because whatever register your whatever message you're trying to send in English, that message has to be just as strong in the exact same register as in the other languages. So well, there's some really basic guidelines out there, and we can definitely help you with that. It's also best to go a little deeper and just establish your own before starting localization, or as you're starting localization.
All right. Here's another similar oriented question. Is there a standards organization for I-18N of mobile apps, or a repository of various documents on the topic? I'll let you go first.
Wait, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Is there a standards organization for I-18N of mobile apps, or a repository of various documents on the topic?
Standards organization? I don't think there is one yet.
Yeah, there's definitely not one.
In our business, we seem to be very slow in establishing standards, unfortunately. But
Right.
but it's it's a great question. Great question.
Yeah. As far as repository of various documents, nothing centralized. You can really hunt and peck, with your search engine of choice. But I have to say, this is still, even though this is not what I'd call a brand new market from yesterday, this is a market that's exploding now, which is which is why there's so many of you on this call. Or so many people registered, especially. There's just this is exploding, and there isn't really a clear path of how to out there. There's whole books on internationalizing Java applications, or internationalizing XML, and all kinds of good stuff like that, but not much in the area of mobile. All right, Chris, we've got 1 minute left. Do you want to talk a little bit about, just mention our events again and wrap it up?
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely, looks like we're going to do another roundtable on this topic. We had a ton of people register for the event, so look out for that. And then, as I mentioned, an event coming up in the Bay Area, most likely beginning mid-March. And then, let me see, just another interesting question came in from Sultan. Let me see. Would device-specific issues be a concern? For example, certain devices do not have support for certain locale. For example, CDMA devices only support ASCII 7 bits only still. How do you address those?
Wow, that's great. I was actually planning on answering a lot of the low-level technical questions in an email, and that's my own way of covering for I don't know. And I need a little engineering help on that. A lot of times people think I'm personally an engineer, and it's only because I fake it well, but I'm not. You know, one of the huge bummers is that you can't write an application for iOS, and then you have to write another one for Android, and and so on. But the ASCII 7 bit is yet another bummer. You have the concept. I'd hate to have to go back to the concept of code pages, but that's. I think I'd rather answer that in detail with a little help from an engineer here.
All right, sounds great.
Yeah, I'll join in, and any questions that you have as a follow-up, especially I love lower level technical questions, but also strategy or anything else. I'm at danitza@localizing.com.
Okay, and I'll include that in the email when I send out the link to the recording. Danitza, I'll include your email address.
Wonderful.
I think that's it, guys. Yeah, Danitza, thanks so much for taking the time. I think you'll also be in that panel on the 19th. Any last words? I'd like to thank the audience for your interest. We'll catch you next time. Adam, Danitza, any last words?
Nope. No, great to have this. And you've given us a lot of food for thought for a follow-on, so thank you. All right.
Danitza, thank you very much. And we'll talk to all of you next time. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.